Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So I have kind of a roundup for you today of, what all happened this week and a bunch of different humiliating things that occurred or humiliating for Trump, I should say, not the rest of us. So it was a good week for the rest of us, not so much for him and his team. So here is the deal. Trump was given a literal participation trophy at the FIFA World Cup 2026 draw. I don't know if you guys caught this, but really embarrassing. I mean, they've been saying, oh, he's kind of like the Make-A-Wish kid now. He's like the Make-A-Wish president. Like, almost like they know he's dying. And so they're just trying to do all these things to fluff him up. They're the fluffers, really, trying to make him feel better about himself. The FIFA president, his name, I believe, is pronounced Gianni Infantino. He presented Trump with this completely fake award. Like, they literally seem to have just made this up. They called it the FIFA Peace Prize. And he said, quote, "In an increasingly unsettled and divided world, it's fundamental to recognize the outstanding contribution of those who work hard to end conflicts and bring people together in a spirit of peace." Hey, you seriously can't make this shit up. Or, well, no, I guess apparently you can, right? You can just invent non-existent awards and pretend that people ended wars, right? Because we all know Trump hasn't ended any wars. He's made up some that he claims to have ended. He also did not end the conflict in Gaza because Israel is still murdering Palestinians. So, yeah, don't know why. Don't know why they're giving this to him. Anyway, also this week, Trump's Justice Department decided they want to screw over cancer patients. So take a look at this. Evidently, Trump's DOJ has decided that instead of backing cancer patients, they're going to back the maker of the cancer-causing herbicide known as Roundup. So if you are not aware, there are thousands of Americans, like hundreds of thousands, who have suffered and died of cancer, and they allege it's because they were exposed to this poison, to Roundup. And many of the living victims, many of the families of the deceased victims, they filed lawsuits. Also, various state prosecutors have filed lawsuits as well. And as you guys may remember, Monsanto was the company that originally created and produced Roundup. Well, Bayer Corporation purchased Monsanto in 2018 because things were getting a little hot in the kitchen for them, right? People branded them Monsatan. They were one of the most hated corporations on earth for good reason. They were absolutely evil. So Bayer took that over. Bayer took over the evil. So they are now fighting all of these legal challenges. And Trump's DOJ is now asking the Supreme Court to side with them over the cancer patients. They're asking the Supreme Court to shield Bayer from these state prosecutions. And the people who would have been most exposed to all of this are people in rural areas, right? I mean, that's where most of the land is. That's where you have room to grow crops. And so that means a good number of the people who were most affected by Roundup are likely to be Trump voters. And Trump gave his supporters another big FU this week, another big middle finger. He pardoned corrupt Democrat, Henry Cuellar. I think is how you pronounce it. Cuellar. Anyway, Cuellar. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it. But anyway, I have mentioned him before. He is barely a Democrat. He is anti-choice, thinks that he should be able to tell women what to do with their bodies, all kinds of right-leaning views. Well, he and his wife, as I've mentioned before, were accused of taking bribes. Not just small bribes. They're accused of taking over $500,000 in bribes in exchange for Kilar's favorable treatment towards certain companies and other countries, Azerbaijan being one. So this is the exact opposite of draining the swamp. And Republican lawmakers aren't really happy about this because they were hoping that because of this, Kilar would be out and then they could easily pick up his seat in the midterms. I mean, you really have to wonder, what exactly did Kilar promise him? What did he promise Trump in exchange for this pardon? Right? Because then he came out and praised him. Oh, this wonderful leadership of Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. So it's going to be interesting. We really need to keep an eye on how he votes going forward, if he switches parties after the midterm elections. You know, a bunch of lawmakers have done that in the past. They will run as a Democrat, and then as soon as they win, with the help of Democratic voters, they all of a sudden change their loyalty and they change their party affiliation. So if Democrats have any common sense in Texas, you need to find a different candidate and run them against this asshole. This is why I always say, just because someone has a D behind their name, it does not mean that they're a good person, doesn't mean that you can trust them. Like Gavin Newsom, who couldn't answer a question not too long ago about AIPAC and Israel's influence in America. That's a red flag, guys. Anyway, we're also learning more about Pete Hegseth and his extrajudicial murders in the middle of the ocean. And you guys are going to be so shocked to hear the Trump administration is lying about the facts. I know, this is my shock face. Anyway, the Wall Street Journal had reported this week that Hegseth forced Admiral Alvin Halsey to resign after he expressed concerns about these bombings. What do you know? So this is Admiral Halsey here in this photo. They wrote in part, quote, "As the military began striking alleged drug boats, Halsey was initially concerned about murky legal authority for the boat strike campaign, according to former officials. Tensions between Halsey and Hegseth led to a confrontation at the Pentagon in early October. Air Force General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was also at the meeting. In addition to Halsey, Colonel Paul Meagher, the command's top lawyer, was initially concerned about the ramifications for U.S. service members because targeting the alleged drug boats stretched the boundaries of the legal definition of combatants engaging in military hostilities, according to a third U.S. official and former senior U.S. official." So you had two career guys, one of them the top lawyer for the Department, or I guess not the Department of Defense anymore, the Department of War, both saying, hey, not real sure about the legal, stability of this, the legal grounds for this. Could be a problem. Hegseth's like, nope, you need to do it. Because according to the Journal, Hegseth told Halsey, quote, "You're either on the team or you're not. When you get an order, you move out fast and don't ask questions." Now, we did hear from Democratic lawmakers who attended a meeting about all of this and viewed the video footage that apparently Hegseth did not give an order that said, quote unquote, "kill them all." That had been reported. I had shared that with you guys earlier this week. But the New York Times reported that Hegseth had set up a protocol for if in fact they did have survivors for any of these attacks. So what they wrote is that, quote, The military would attempt to rescue survivors who appeared to be helpless, shipwrecked, and out of what the administration considered a fight. But it would try again to kill them if they took what the United States deemed to be a hostile action, like communicating with suspected cartel members. Here's the thing. Up until yesterday, and this is why this is important, up until yesterday, there were reports that the two survivors of that first strike had used a radio to call for help. So that would be deemed these men trying to continue on with their drug mission, I guess, right? If there were any other boats in the area who, were of similar mindset, also looking to sell drugs, they come along, pick them up, pick up the drugs. This is all bullshit, okay? First of all, according to the lawmakers who watched the video of the strikes, there was no radio. The complete back end of the boat was taken out by the first bomb. Only the very front of the boat, from what they explained, still existed. So the engine was gone. The engine was blown up, it was sunk, and along with the drugs. So what exactly were they going to try to do, right? Were they going to go scuba diving, try to get the drugs from the bottom of the ocean? I mean, what did they think was going to happen here? There was no justification. From everything that I've heard from all the different lawmakers who've been interviewed and from statements that they've put out online, these two men were trying to flip the boat over, what was left of it, to save themselves. They were just trying to stay afloat. I mean, you're out in the middle of the freaking ocean. They weren't anywhere near land. So, of course, there are sharks in the water. You want to get out of the water as quickly as possible after this. You definitely don't want to drown. So anyway, that second strike was unequivocally a violation of military guidelines, which specifically says in their own handbook that if there are men who are shipwrecked, you can't fire on them. They have to be taken into custody alive. Small penis syndrome Pete, though, was also cited for another thing this week. So this is not his only issue. He is causing Trump all kinds of agadu, right? He is causing him so much upset. So he was cited in an IG report, an Inspector General's report, for endangering the lives of military members when he shared those details about that strike on Signal. So you guys will remember this happened months ago. They were going to bomb Yemen, and they were discussing the strike, and a reporter just happened to have been included accidentally. So anyway, he's talking about this on Signal, and the Inspector General's report, and I will bring this up for you guys so you can see, they stated in this report, quote, if this information had fallen into the hands of U.S. adversaries, Houthi forces might have been able to counter U.S. forces or reposition personnel and assets to avoid planned U.S. strikes. Even though these events did not ultimately occur, the Secretary's actions created a risk to operational security that could have resulted in failed U.S. mission objectives and potential harm to U.S. pilots. So not only could he have screwed up the entire mission, but he could have caused mortal harm to these U.S. pilots. They could have been shot down. The IG also said that Hegseth violated department protocol, which specifically bars officials from conducting government business on personal devices. They also bar and prohibit the use of commercial messaging apps to transmit non-public information. So, yeah, and now Pete Hegseth is out there going, oh, yep, totally exonerated. Yep, I got a total pass. See, I did nothing wrong. It was proven. I mean, these people are the biggest freaking liars ever. Last but not least for this week, as of this morning, this was probably the biggest humiliation this week, to be honest. A new grand jury declined to bring an indictment against Trump nemesis Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. So they tried again. You guys will remember a judge, or yeah, I think it was one judge that kicked out threw out the Letitia James and the James Comey prosecution. So they brought it again before a new grand jury. Absolutely humiliating, because you only need a simple majority. There are typically 23 jurors on a grand jury. You only need 12 of them to say yes in order to bring the charges. And then check this out, you guys. This is infuriating. As you guys know, the original indictment against James and against James Comey, they were brought by Trump's latest unqualified hack, Lindsay Halligan. Okay, she was literally what was she? She was in pageants. She was like a pageant queen turned attorney. So she has no prosecution experience. She's just like, did insurance claims and stuff, like total fraud, right? So the court ruled that she was illegally appointed and wasn't allowed to serve as U.S. attorney. And then another judge said the same thing about Trump minion, who you see here on your right, Alina Habba. She was appointed as the U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. And yet, as you can see here, Donald Trump's DOJ is still referring to each of them as U.S. attorneys. So this is the most lawless and corrupt presidency in American history. It's not even close. Between all of the grifting, the meme coins, the, Truth Social, all this other bullshit, it's out of control. But like I said, humiliating week for Trump. So overall, it was a great week. It was a good one. All right, guys, I will let you know when I hear more. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Have a great weekend. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.